Karthikeya, we can start.
Sure. Welcome everyone on this webinar on just transition, planning for a post-coal future. I would like to thank all the participants and the panelists for taking out the time and come here to discuss their views on the topic at hand. So without further ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Rashmi, Distinguished Fellow, Program Director, Integrated Policy Analysis Division at TERI, for the welcome address.
Thank you very much. On behalf of TERI and all my colleagues, let me welcome all of you to this webinar, and a very big thank you for being with us today. We are gathered here to discuss some of the work in terms of research that TERI has done in the field of just transition with focus on the coal sector. Coal is an important segment. It has traditionally met our energy needs. It is key to India's industrialization. It has propelled the rural constituencies into centers of growth and continues to be a source of livelihood to several millions. At least 6 coal-rich states of India, Andhra Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Madhya Pradesh, Maharashtra, and Odisha, depend a lot on the coal sector for sustenance of their economy. And in times of COVID, a sector that performs these multiple roles is naturally one that deserves full attention. What is important in terms of coal is that besides contributing to other goals, it also makes up about 44% of India's total primary energy supply and 74% of total electricity generation. So the share of coal in the energy balance and in electricity generation is much higher in India, where the access to alternative fuels is limited. But coal is now under tremendous pressure because of several environmental and even economic issues. There are clear signs of a transition away from coal towards low carbon electricity generation, in particular renewables. And in developed economies, in fact, the share of coal in electricity has been falling for several decades, and the decline has accelerated in recent years. Globally, this transition away from coal in the electricity particularly has gained momentum in recent years because of climate and energy policies. Now, addressing climate change goals involves choices in terms of fuels, which require that we shift away from fossil fuels. There may be debate about the speed and quality of this transition, depending on the kind of growth trajectory that we may need to follow. But with the threat of climate change looming in the background, the questions about the unavoidability, if not inevitability, of this transition have more or less been settled. We must therefore prepare for the change that will eventually come. The question, therefore, is what does this imply for the coal sector in future? What does the future hold for large sections of our society dependent on coal? Shall we simply see the closure or scaling down of economic activities in the centers of coal production and loss of livelihoods and incomes? Undoubtedly, the transition will be painful and may even generate social and political hostility. This is a challenge we have to meet. We have to convert this challenge not just into a loss, but a gainful and productive opportunity. So these are the questions we propose to deliberate today in this session. I'm thankful to CIFF, the Children's Investment Fund Foundation, for providing us support to enable us to conduct some meaningful research into this area in these difficult times of COVID. There are 2 specific papers that our research teams have come out with on the subject of the vulnerabilities faced by the coal sector and the way forward in coping with these vulnerabilities. I congratulate the team for this great work. You will get a presentation on the work that the team has done, but I would just like to briefly mention the kind of messages which I think we will need to deal with when handling this problem. First is that the future of coal is uncertain, if not over. When one speaks of a transition away from coal, one is speaking primarily of a transition in the electricity supply mix as of now. The demand for coal for industrial use may not decline that fast because the development and deployment of new fuels like hydrogen may not happen too soon. So it's still, the jury is still out. Second is that there are different kinds of vulnerabilities implicit in the transition away from coal. We must therefore address each one of these vulnerabilities and not leave anyone unattended if our efforts in terms of just transition have to succeed. Lastly, we have to find constructive solutions based on nature, and we must be able to finance the losses to different stakeholders. Adequate compensation to the coal-rich states through appropriate mechanisms, either constitutional or market-based, is extremely important. If we have to secure our environmental and economic future, and we have to gather a political consensus on these issues. We are fortunate to have been joined today by a distinguished set of policymakers, experts, and practitioners from the government, think tanks, academia, industry, and civil society to discuss the extent to which the transition and the future of coal will take place in future. I welcome in particular Mr. M. Nagaraju, the Additional Secretary in the Ministry of Coal, who will deliver the keynote address to us on this subject. I have a bond with Mr. Nagaraju because we share the same cadre of Manipur, Tripura and IES before the governance made us part our way. I also welcome Mr. Rajnath Ram, Advisor Niti Aayog, and Srimati Bhargav, Executive Director of the NTPC, for having found time for us, for having agreed to be with us and share their thoughts. Let me welcome you once again without losing any further time to this session, and look forward to a very fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Rashmi, for the valuable views. Now I'd like to welcome Mr. Rajnath Ram, the advisor at Niti Aayog, for the address.
Thank you. Am I audible? Yeah, okay. So many thanks for inviting me for this very august topic with respect to just transition, keeping the perspective of future coal scenarios. The just transition comes in with the idea that there must be some kind of compensation for the workers, industries, and the states that will be left behind as the world moves away from the fossil fuels and adopt more cleaner energy options. As we know, that Indian economy is hugely fossil dependent. In our entire energy basket, coal constitutes about more than 50%, oil about 30%, gas nearly 6.5%, and rest minor share is occupied with the other kind of renewables, particularly solar, wind, hydro, and the nuclear sector. The fossil fuel, particularly the coal, has both economic and social importance. It has played a central role in the regional and the local economies, contributing to the economic and the development growth objectives of the nation. It has primarily driven the manufacturing sector, created employment opportunities, and added value along the supply chain of the material goods. Though India has committed to reduce emission intensity of the gross domestic product by 33 to 35% by 2030, based on the 2005 levels, it has also pledged to increase the share of non-fossil fuel-based electricity to 40% by 2030, with the international support on the technology transfer and financing, which includes an ambitious target of achieving 175 gigawatt by 2022 and 450 gigawatt of renewable by 2030. Therefore, a transition to a low economy low carbon economy and towards the use of cleaner energy fuels is a very important, but there is a growing concern related to the labor displacement issues, state specific concerns of their revenue generation, and the power sector concerns, etc., in the existing coal value chains that need to be addressed to ensure a seamless transition. Just transition is the concept that rests on the idea of the justice and the equity being an integral part of the transition towards a low carbon world. The concept of just transition is an imperative as the economy and the social dependence on coal is used, especially for the coal producing states including Jharkhand, Odisha, Chhattisgarh, West Bengal, Madhya Pradesh, Telangana, and Tamil Nadu. There exists a strong dependence between the mineral extractions and the local livelihood activities, since coal mining generates large scale of employment opportunities. Coal mining is also a source of revenue for the number of the states in India. The presence of mine in the territory also contributes to the local development by inducing improvement in the local infrastructure such as road network and the water supply, allow the local population to have better access to the health and education services. Thus, there will be a vulnerabilities arising from the phasing out of the coal mining, including the loss of livelihoods that will create a long-term unemployment space among the workers. The other would be the economic revenue that coal dominated states will face. The coal mines in the Jharkhand contributes approximately one-sixth of the overall coal royalty in India, as paid by the Coal India Limited, and the royalties received by the Chhattisgarh, Madhya Pradesh, Odisha, and Telangana around 15%, each in total coal royalty collected in the country. Further, the positive externality effect that is created by the coal revenue cannot be underestimated either. So coal companies are supposed to contribute 26% of their profit into the district mineral fund, which are then used for social upliftment and the livelihood and empowerment of the people. The social and infrastructural vulnerabilities associated with the phasing out of the coal would also be huge, as mining activity bring basic infrastructure facilities such as schools, hospitals, and construction of improved transition and communication facilities to remote villages. Like CIL has established vital infrastructure facilities such as home for the underprivileged, orphanage children, hostels for the girls belonging to BPA, and skill development centers for the backward community. So all these, I mean, the sectors would really would be affected much when we are moving from the fossil waste to the clean energy transition. Because of the several interdependencies within the network, the case for phase out of the coal needs to be assessed carefully. So that is our submission. So thus just transition will maybe it will help to address these vulnerabilities and mark out the opportunities, but it is important to know that how the seamless socio-economic transition can be achieved. So that is a critical factor that needs to be assessed very carefully. But the answer to the economic vulnerabilities arising from the phasing out of the coal is the diversification of the region. Already CIL has started its diversification plan. And an industrial diversification for such states that include establishment of industrial parks, manufacturing facilities, the existing network of railways, and these coal estates can also be leveraged upon the post-just transition scenario. The establishment of the cleaner energy sources like solar powers in these states is also an opportunity that will open up a stream of possibilities of utilizing of the existing land resources, providing employment opportunities, and establishing multiple streams for economic revenue. It has also been thought that some of the abundant sites can be utilized or repurposed for the clean energy installations. Even the nuclear power corporation has also thought that they are looking for some kind of abundant coal mine area to settle there some of the for development of small modular reactor plants. It can be established that the just and a seamless transition toward a low carbon economy would require few drivers, such as the adequate public as well as the private financing that can finance the infrastructure projects and the industrialization of the coal-dependent state post the phasing out of the coal. But the barrier arising out of the loss of employment opportunities for the existing workforce in the coal-producing states would need to be addressed very, very carefully, because that's an important parameters, and that may be an intervening factor where this transition effect, transition activities may be hampered. But this can be done by bringing together the government, business unions, educational institutions, and civil society together. Both the private and the public sector can play a significant role in just transition by developing new emerging sector that can mitigate the negative impact and reinforce the positive development. However, this would require multiple dialogues wherein the relevant stakeholder from all the groups can cohesively participate and partnership with all the stakeholders and come together and bring a lot of discussion, deliberations, and the government has to be also proactively uh, uh, invoke the decision, invoke the discussion with all the relevant stakeholders. And the overall structure needs to be put in place that can enable, and maybe a detailed roadmap is required for just transition post the phasing out from the uh, heavy dependent of coal to the clean energy transition. With these remarks, I conclude. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Ram, for the valuable insights and expanding on the definition of just transition and the vulnerabilities associated with the coal phase out. Now I'd like to welcome Mr. Mohit Bhargav, Executive Director of Renewable Energy at NTPC Limited, for the special address.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. I hope I'm audible. Okay, good. So good morning to all my friends at TERI and all those who are connected today. I'd like to thank TERI at the outset for having me here today. Well, on the subject of the webinar today, and I did think Mr. Rashmi did mention that probably coal is dying a slow death. So maybe I'm not sure we need to rush into that obituary straight away. But because I understand the CA is working on a plan to finalize the optimal fuel mix, which they did earlier, and they're trying to fix that. I do agree that coal has primarily been the source of energy for India up till now. And as we also expect that going forward, coal will probably move away from being the base load factor to a balancing factor in the supply mix, because India has already set for itself very ambitious targets and is well on its way. This transition would certainly happen as India has already embarked on its journey for adding large capacity of renewable energy sources, which stand at over 25% for the variable renewable energy sources and nearly 38% when we include hydro also. We are confident that India shall exceed its NDC commitments by a very good margin. As far as NTPC is concerned, we stand at 66 gigawatt today, most of it being coal-based capacity. But we have set for ourselves a target to achieve 60 gigawatts of renewable capacity by 2032. And we are quite hopeful that by this time, the renewable capacity would be almost as large as our conventional capacity. We are also focusing on more businesses that are sustainable, including zero carbon mobility like electric buses, hydrogen FCV, electric charging systems, waste to energy solutions, including firing of agro residue-based pellets, which we already started at our coal-based plants, and using MSW for energy solutions. We also have huge plans to move into green hydrogen, and that has been, and at multiple forums, we have been saying that for us, hydrogen is green hydrogen alone. And this includes moving into green hydrogen, not only as green hydrogen, but also as various derivatives like green methanol and green ammonia, which can be easily used to not only decarbonize the power sector, but also decarbonize other different sectors like steel, refinery, fertilizers, and maybe in the future going ahead also for aviation and marine fuel. In the due course, NTPC is transitioning from a predominantly coal-based generating company to an integrated sustainable energy company. I think many webinars have already focused on transition to a clean energy scenario. Therefore, when the subject also mentions just transition, we find that this is particularly close to NTPC's heart. NTPC in various international forums, we have been very, very vocal on just transition. And therefore, it's important that we are finally looking at mainstreaming it in India as well. For us, transition is about sustainability, which does not impact anyone materially, whether rich or poor, rural or urban. It has to ensure that people do not go without jobs. It has to ensure that transition benefits everyone. It has to be ensured that every stakeholder, direct or indirect, is a part in a positive manner. The problem of climate change is global. Emissions and pollution do not respect national borders. IEA has said that while 1 ton of CO2 emitted anywhere in the world affects everyone, but $1 spent in the developing world for transition is more beneficial as compared to $1 spent in the developed world, and which is what we probably need to do much more. World today is witnessing several kinds of technological disruptions in different sectors. What we have seen in the past is that every time a technology breakthrough happens and is adopted widely, it has yielded benefits to the public. Typical examples being in the area of telecom, smartphones leading to internet access, e-commerce, online education, etc. Similar breakthrough and benefits need to be pushed as India goes through energy transition. While environmental benefits are evident easily through lower pollution and improvements in health, financial benefits accrue gradually over an extended period. With a shift towards an ambitious decarbonized power sector in India, coal sector-based jobs are expected to decline by about 50% between 2020 and 2050. The transition, therefore, needs to be efficiently managed to mitigate negative impacts on displaced workers and communities. I'm sure government is keen to address these issues, as Mr. Rajnath Ram also mentioned during his address. One of the important things that we find will help in just transition is skilling, and which remains a primary future challenge. India would require skilled and low-skilled technicians in the renewable sector. This number would increase many times as per the current requirements. And government is planning to significantly boost the employment by making different skill developments and trainings. RE technologies generally tend to be more labor-intensive during the implementation period. However, during the project operation period, the number of jobs do tend to go down significantly. So therefore, the skilling programs need to focus on not only solar, wind, and hybrid technologies for project implementation. It should also focus on developing entrepreneurship for EPC vendors, for developing EPC and O&M vendors, creating and promoting manufacturing hubs, which also government is pushing, which will actually enable a lot of jobs on the manufacturing side in the renewable sector. Training should be focused on development and promotion of new technologies like floating solar, green hydrogen, battery storage, electric vehicle charging, and so on and so forth. We also need to focus on small-scale hydro, rooftop solar, and biomass to create maximum employment for every unit of decarbonization which happens. Similarly, on the decentralized generation front, like Kusum, like rooftop, net metering, and so on and so forth. So there are umpteen areas where we need to focus on reskilling. We need to focus on people moving away from a fossil fuel-based economy to jobs on the renewable side, on a sustainable side. And in fact, NTPC has also committed itself to developing quite a few learning centers, whether at the level of the IITs, also at the level of creating industrial training, ITIs, Industrial Training Institute, so that we are able to push more and more people into an area which can help them be reskilled and be ready for a transition. At the end, green climate is about people. The transition has to be about the people. The primary focus of clean energy transition is to demonstrate environment conscious growth and take care of all kinds of people, including human lives. With transition to newer, greener technology, reskilling of the workforce will be very, very imminent. It would also entail migration of workforce from areas where great technologies are phased out. As the saying goes, there's nothing permanent. And as we also transition, the deployment of green technologies will definitely open new avenues of workforce. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bhargav, for talking about the work that have been undertaken at the NTPC. Now I'd like to welcome Mr. M. Nagaraju, Additional Secretary, Ministry of Coal, for the keynote address.
Thank you. At the outset, let me thank TERI for inviting me for this webinar on just transition and for planning for a post-coal future, which is a very definitive statement coming from the TERI. So, Mr. R. Rashmi, the Distinguished Fellow and Program Director, Mr. Rajnath Ram, my colleague from Niti Aayog, Mr. Mohit Bhargav, and other distinguished panelists. I'm very happy to be part of this webinar discussion on talking about just transition. You know, when the World Bank was talking about just transition since last 5-6 years, that was in the context of Europe, where the coal mines, when the European Union and EC have decided to transition away from coal. And the question was, how do we rehabilitate the people, the livelihoods, secure livelihoods, ensure the lands which were used for coal are repurposed. And the just transition principles, I think I saw the note prepared by the TERI that is going to be released today. Those principles have been applied for closure of some coal mines in Poland as well as in Germany. And let me remind you, the mines are yet to be fully closed, despite the European countries and European Union and a large number of climate change activists, organizations working for so many years. They are still unable to fully close and reclaim the land and repurpose the land completely. Not that they have not done it, but completely they are unable to do that. It takes time. The point I'm making is transitioning, if you want to transition a coal mine, it takes a lot of time, a lot of effort, a lot of partnerships, and a lot of resources. It's just simply, it's not one government or one agency will be able to do this. And also we require a lot of knowledge as well as technology. I think these factors, I think all of us who are in the energy sector, we all should keep it in mind about the implications. Let me talk about tell you about certain things. You know, India's average in 2018, the per capita consumption energy is about 970. This is as per the IEA report, annual report. And the world's average is 3,200, about 60 kilowatts. Now, if India were to even reach, let's say, 50% of the world's average per capita, then our existing energy capacity has to be doubled. Simple. Now, where does this come from? People may be very bullish on RE. Yes, it may come from some from REs. Some may come from oil, gas. But I don't think everything will come from other sources. I think that is too impractical and utopian idea to think that nothing will come from the coal in the next 20-30 years. Now, you know, the other thing which we have to keep it in mind is India has a population of 18% of world population, but we still use only 6% of world's primary energy. So we have not even reached. We are in fact about 1/3. We are not come. So there is a long way to go for India as India is developing, and the villages and the small towns get electricity, and their incomes rise. Their use also will rise. I think I see Mr. Rahul Tongia is here. as one of the panelists. I think he has summed up a lot of things in his book, recent book, which I have the privilege to go through it. So the countries, there is as a country, we need to provide the same basic necessities, and these necessities cannot be provided unless each household has uninterrupted power supply. And the fridges, ACs, and chargers, and so washing machines, I think everything will come for the rural areas everywhere. So we have to keep that in mind. This we have done a what would be like in 2030? What would be the role of coal in 2030? A study by the KPMG we commissioned 2 years ago, and later on the NITI Aayog also done recently a study, the energy mix in 2030. Now the present the energy mix, coal is about 46%, and in 2030 also it is likely to be around 46%. And oil it is 29%, and 2030 also is going to be again 29%. Is RE is the one which is likely to see some jump from the present about 3% to 8%, and the decline is from others. Others is contribute about 19% presently last year, and it is going to be 9% in 2030. Now the coal, if it is 2030, it is still going to constitute about 46% of the energy mix. So what kind of coal we require? What is the amount of coal we require? So when we done some simulations, likely that we are going to produce about 1.5 billion tons of coal. Presently, the country produced last year, I think, was 15 million tons. So by 2030, we should be likely to see anywhere around 1.5 billion tons of coal. And most of that will be coming from about a billion or 1.2 billion from the Coal India and the Singareni collieries, and the remaining 3 to 4 billion should be coming from the commercial actions we are doing now. We already given coal blocks almost about 418 million tons of PRC, and there is a current round of auctions that is currently on about 150 million tons for the fully export coal blocks. So we will have about anywhere between 550, 575 million tons of commercial coal that will be in the market in the next 4 to 5 years. That will be available in addition to the CIL planning and Singareni. So the coal, the story is, in fact, is a robust, and the coal story is going to be there. It's you take any parameter it is going to be there. Let me tell you some again some numbers. The per capita coal consumption in Australia is 4.5 presently. In China it is 2.7. Germany is again 2.7. USA is almost 1.9 metric ton MT. India it is only 0.7. And there is the talk of, I think Rashmi Shah was in the Ministry of Environment and Forest earlier. I think he knows that the equity, the equity has to be maintained. When this is the only way to secure energy to the vast millions of poor people in the country. The coal is still cheaper to maintain compared to the REs. All the studies shows that the operating cost for coal is still cheaper than RE. If you take out the transmission charges for RE will not stand anywhere before the coal. Yes, there is an emissions issue is there. And how do we manage those emissions? How do we make it the burning of coal much more eco-friendly, much more we capture the carbon emissions? I think that's where we need to do some research, deploy technologies, and think about that. Now, the transition involves several in fact transitions. I think I just alluded to some of them. Let me put it in a very structured manner. See, when you are transitioning from coal, we also transition to low carbon economy, and then we also transition to REs. We also transition away from coal, and we also have to transition about livelihoods. Okay, so large number of people who are dependent on the coal now, we need to find livelihoods transitions. It's not very easy. retrain people, change the attitudes. Remember, I think when we are in the universities and college in 80s and when the England is battling closure of coal mines, the people, entire generations, they are dependent on the coal. That is the skill they have. And it is not only skill, it is also culture. If you look at Appalachian in America and the Western states, the coal somehow actually it is just not just coal. It's not coal mining. It's a coal mining culture. Okay, it's a coal mining livelihoods. The whole life revolves around that. So we need to understand. We need to understand the poor people. We need to understand the middle class in those coal-bearing states. How do we answer those anxieties? How do we answer the questions, their queries, and then ensure that they culturally move away from the coal as and when we transition. Now, when I'm talking about saying that that coal has a bright and a long future in India, at least in the next 20, 30 years, there's nothing to worry about the energy mix. Even if there is a increased demand for RE, that increased demand for energy supply and energy, that may be met by the gas and REs or wind, but not the coal is going to be there. Okay, the net availability of energy mix of coal will going to be there. So what do we do? You know, India has been coal mining for a number of years. Before independence also we started, and some of the mines we have closed, but not very scientifically. And some of the mines will be likely to be closed in the next 5 to 10 years. And what we need to do is those mines which we are actually likely to close are closed, ensure that we maintain standards. The standards of closure, standards of environment, and standards of reclamation, standards of repurposing. These are the things which we need to do when we close a coal mine, which we have not done till now very scientifically. We have a body called Coal Controller Office, which monitors, but this is completely under-equipped and under capacity, both skills as well as knowledge. And there is not much research body available in the country itself on the environmental impact or environmental roadmap on closing the coal mines, decoaled coal mines. I think it's where we need to, the research bodies, institutions like TERI and others need to work. How do we scientifically and productively close decoaled mines and use the land and the people to benefit the society and the families? I think this is where we need to be. And we also need to be a responsible miner. See, the country, whether it is the Coal India, Singareni, or the private sector, all of us need to do what you have to do is we need to be very responsible miner. Ensure that we don't damage the nature. Whatever the land we have taken, whatever we have inherited, is returned after the coal mining is completed and completely restored. In fact, some of the restored mines in England, in Germany, they are very beautiful, and it same goes with England also. I think we can do that. Same thing, we can do that, and we can completely restore ecosystem, ensure our children have a bright future, our country has a bright future, and we also contribute to the climate change, the debate, and we are not seen or pursued as laggard or reluctant to address these questions, which actually directly impact more poor people compared to the rich who are living in Delhi. Now, we should be all conscious of the climate change implications and take whatever measures required to ensure that we are also part of the problem. We are also part of the solution to the problem. The other thing which I wanted to mention is any process of this transition has to be the states have to be majority stakeholder. Now, when we acquire the permissions, all permissions are given by the states, all the revenue goes to the states, employment is in the states, and the state is the one which is the majority stakeholder. No, it's not the center. In a federal country like ours, states have to be partnered and states have to be strengthened and ensure that they are the equal stakeholder in the process of transition. I think we need to open up a dialogue. I think it can be started by some people who are interested. I think the TERI may talk to you about that. Now, lastly, I want to say one thing. It's too early to sing the obituary to coal in India, and we will have a long future in the coal, but we have to be very responsible and ensure that our environment is protected, our country is protected, and the livelihoods are protected. Thank you so much for inviting me and giving me a very patient hearing. Thank you. I wish you all the best to TERI and other participants.
Thank you, Mr. Nagaraju, for the insightful information, especially on the part of how we need to shut down our coal mines efficiently and in an environmentally safe manner. Since we are living this pandemic, we can't physically launch the two discussion papers that we at TERI have worked on. And the topic of just transition is something that we've been working on for about 18 months, and we've collated valuable insights in terms of the vulnerabilities and how we can, the gaps that they will create and how we can create them as an opportunity in terms of moving forward to a coal phase out era. So we will do a virtual launch for the two discussion papers, and the links for the two discussion papers will be provided to you shortly, and the papers will also be uploaded on the TERI website. So can we please have that? Well, thank you, everyone. We will now have a short presentation on the two discussion papers and the works that we have done at TERI. So I'll just take that forward.
Good morning, everybody. I hope I'm audible and the screen is also visible to everybody.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Okay, thank you. This presentation essentially is going to capture some of the key salient features and the findings that we have found through our 1.5 years of analysis, looking at the process, not only the process, but understanding the key challenges and how we can overcome those challenges in terms of interventions that can be aligned with the existing policies. But at the same time, there would be certain out-of-the-box thinking that would be required in terms of making this transition more meaningful and just. Esteemed delegates are aware of the contribution of coal to economic growth and development. However, the growing climate change concerns have raised voices for an energy transition across countries. Needless to mention, India has announced and implemented numerous initiatives towards this direction. Possibly what has been ignored in the process is the social dimensions and short-term economic implications leading to the emergence of the concept of just transition. Based on extensive research and stakeholder interactions, we have come up with two discussion papers and outputs that assess issues related to the vulnerability arising from energy transition and what opportunities need to be harnessed for achieving just transition. Solutions emerge only when there is a clarity on the challenges from the energy transition process. This includes the potential reduction in state revenues from the reduction in royalties, loss in livelihood, maintaining existing social infrastructure, reclaiming land and augmenting environmental resources, and protecting the interests of the people engaged in the informal sector becomes the key elements of the challenges that we see in the entire transition process or in the energy transition process. Now, if we go to take a deeper dive in terms of understanding the challenges that we have discussed right at this moment, the first is definitely the livelihood issues that has been discussed extensively during the inaugural session. So despite many initiatives, we still see that the depth of poverty in many of the mining districts is quite high. Long unemployment spells may aggravate the situation with dip in income that has been reported at 30 and 40%. So what we see is that already some of the mining districts have been faring relatively lower to the performance of the state performance. And over and above, if we see a kind of a transition happening, that may have an impact or may have a drastic impact on the overall economic well-being of the people, particularly who are dependent in coal mining. Moreover, if we see the share of skilling the unskilled workers in the Indian context, the coal mining, the people who are engaged in the coal mining operations, their share in the overall people who are trained and skilled, they are still relatively low. Equally important to mention the coal mining giant CIF's contribution to state exchequer, which is totaling around 430 billion as reported in 2019. So that contributes significantly in the overall revenue sources for major coal mining districts in India and states in India. And in some of the states, we have seen that the revenue share to the total tax, non-tax revenue is almost 20 to 24%, although on an average, we see the share is somewhere between 30 to 15%. But in the case of tax revenue, it is around 4.2 to 5%. Apart from this, there are also other forms of contribution that have already been discussed, which include the contribution to the SGST, the GST compensation cess, and the district mineral foundation. If we go to the next aspect of the challenges, which is nothing but the infrastructure and social vulnerabilities. Mining activities, in fact, have been providing many critical infrastructure facilities for social empowerment, including the schools, the hospitals, the public health centers, and which have come up over the years. So phasing out of coal mines from the pre-established regions would imply loss of existing infrastructure capabilities and the social capital associated with it. Further, mining closure induced displacement forces people to relinquish control over their resources and shifts them to a kind of a new economy, which they are or they may not be in a kind of a familiar position. So that has also an implication in terms of the overall quality of life for the people who might have to be displaced, not because of the mining activities, but here we are talking about the displacement arising from the stopping or the closure of the mining activities. Finally, the element of the illegality is something which has come up extensively in recent literature. So there are vast open cut mines which have narrowed down the scope of alternate occupation, and illegal mines that do not function on the ethics of implementing safety codes in their activities have kind of like jeopardized the lives of the miners it employs. So if we look at Jharkhand, that accounts for close to 300,000 individuals employed in the illegal coal mining industry, out of which 1/3 are children. So gradually phasing out will put the livelihoods of lakhs of people involved in the informal mining activities at risk. The existing regulatory framework cannot comprehensively handle these kind of like interlinkages that exist within the subsector of the informal mining segment, part of which is both licensed and illegal, and part of which is artisanal in nature. So this brings us to the way forward in terms of what challenges can be harnessed. Although because of the paucity of time, it won't be possible for us to cover all the areas that we have looked at. But yes, we would definitely like to touch upon some of the key aspects that we have looked at in terms of ensuring that the challenges that has been presented are mitigated as we move move along the energy transition process. The first and the foremost concern that have been raised is the revenue generation and diversification. So with respect to the conceptual understanding of a rentier economy, which I believe the august audience is very well aware of, we can view the need for a diversification as a tool which uses the existing revenue generated by the resource rents. So that includes like kind of coming up with innovative revenue models in terms of its diversification to other sectors, and in fact innovative land distribution models, including the leasing models. The discussion paper has studied at length the various rural enterprises models and good practices that provide key insights for possible replication. Given the existing social infrastructure will be at risk from the coal phase out, bringing the private sector initiatives under the CSR for upkeep of social infrastructure and provision of additional grant and finance commission devolution will not only ensure continued and better access to social services, but also reduce social inequity and improve state's performance in the SDGs. Now, if we look at some of the key action areas, there are different action areas that we have proposed under the 4 or 5 major areas of opportunities. The first would be to look at how we are able to diversify. So we see that diversify eventually will be extremely important for the states to ensure that the revenue is not lost, but at the same time it is able to create a lot of social and economic opportunities within the region. So developing industrial parks and manufacturing facilities can help diversify the local revenue stream and provide the much needed economic stimulus to ramp up socio-economic measures and further improve the employability of the people. From the perspective of the revenue generation over the last few years, several states have gradually moved towards a land leasing model in order to fast track the establishment of solar energy projects in their respective neighborhood, boost clean energy investments, and enhance employment details. Expansion of renewable energy products, services, and infrastructure will drive development and help improve living conditions, particularly in rural communities where its use as a decentralized energy source has been shown to be a viable and efficient option. Now, obviously, all those that has been proposed will require some kind of a driver that will help in supporting the entire just transition process. So we see that there are essentially 5 critical drivers that will support the entire implementation of the interventions that have been identified. So the first and the foremost thing would be like the financing infrastructure projects through off-budget borrowing and securitization process are innovative ways of raising necessary capital for the public and the private sector. Need-based skilling based on the local opportunities will be key to enhance employability and strengthen livelihood. There is an urgent need to create platforms and networks and task forces comprising of various stakeholders that will facilitate dialogues, partnership, and exchange of good practices and leading to evidence-based learning. And finally, it will support, there is a need for support to develop support development of policies that are visionary, realistic, while creating win-win opportunities for the masses. So in a nutshell, the conclusion is the just transition needs to consider a kind of a broader range of social and economic sectors, geographic locations, diverse stakeholders, and time horizons. We have attempted to highlight the development challenges in the key mining locations, and more so in a situation when mining activities may cease to exist in the future. It has identified a plethora of opportunities that mining states need to exploit to address social and development challenges that may arise through the energy transition process. Thank you so much for your attention, and we look forward for a very healthy discussion as we move ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shawik, for summing up the insights that we have undertaken at TERI. Now we will begin with a panel discussion. I would like to hand over the platform to Mr. A.K. Saxena, Senior Director at TERI. Before we begin the panel discussion, I would like to inform our participants that you can ask the questions in the chat box, and then we will try our best to address the questions. Over to you, Mr. Saxena.
Okay. First of all, a very good morning, or rather, have we crossed the time? Is it good afternoon now? Also, we are just 1 minute short of the hour when we change over. I think very good morning to all of you. Thanks to all of you for making it convenient to attend this. And I'm very happy to note that there are 9 distinguished panelists, quite a few of them we have interacted quite closely. Some of them we have not interacted on a one-to-one basis or on in a group, but then we are very happy to listen to their impressions about. I think the topic today, the topic for panel is just transition and the planning for a post-coal future. Listening to the experts who were there in the morning session, I think the impression comes out that it is a bit too early perhaps to talk about the transition away from the coal. I think this is a question, jury is still out. But then the economics of it is not only the climate change and the environmental considerations which are driving the discussion, but also the economics of power generation, particularly the coal-based power generation, vis-a-vis the renewable-based power generation, which is driving the discussion as well. A few years ago in our country, we were all trying to discuss about when does the cost of renewable power come below the total cost of the new fossil fuel-based power plant, the power. Thereafter, the discussion shifted to the point where when does it come below the variable cost of the coal-based power generation, and then thirdly, then we moved away to a question which was always a critical question: and what do we do when sun doesn't shine or the wind doesn't blow? And then the options which have been there from the SECI side, where the renewable power along with some form of storage, the tariffs have come down to a level which are quite attractive. I think in a nutshell, it is clear that the economics is also going to drive the transition. The only question is, what is the time and what is the speed at which this transition happens? The TERI report, the TERI's work brings out the dimensions in regard to the vulnerabilities and the opportunities which are there. And I think it is perhaps, in our opinion, it should form be a mainstream of the discussion now, rather than thinking when it becomes a bit too late. I think with this opening remarks, I would say that the stage has very well been set by all the distinguished speakers in the inaugural session. And I would request the panelists to confine their observations and impressions to about 8 minutes or so, because we have about 1 hour and about 9 panelists are there. That is what I would like to request. And then we would like to start with Dr. Rahul Tongia. I think I will request the panelists to come one by one, and then I will introduce them in the order in which they are to be speaking, rather than introducing them all at the initial at this point of time. Dr. Rahul Tongia, as we all know, is a senior fellow with the Center for Science and Energy Policy, and he works very on policy, especially on the sustainable development. He leads the energy and natural resources and the sustainability group at their center. His work spans the entire gamut of energy and electricity, the various options, including the renewable energy, the smart grids, etc. I think he has looked at the broader issues of reforms and regulation also. He has also authored a book which is about the future of coal, and the book very clearly brings out that there are winners as well as losers in this in the future of coal, which is likely to be there. And in the book, he emphasizes on a controlled transition moving forward. So, Dr. Rahul, I think a very warm welcome to you. Apart from giving your own impressions, I would be very happy if you could also give your impressions in regard to the impact which the various sectors are likely to witness, not only the coal sector, but also the electricity sector or any other allied sector which you may like to touch upon during these 8 minutes. And how do these sectors need to plan moving forward? Second aspect, if you could cover, it would be good about how to prepare for the impending change from the policy perspective. With these words, over to you, Dr. Rahul. Karthikeyan, we are not able to listen to Dr. Rahul. Yeah, Dr. Rahul, you are audible now.
Thank you. And good afternoon, everyone. It's an important topic, and one where, of course, the details matter, because a lot of my work has been at the systems level, but it's really when you dig deeper, that's when you find the winners and losers. And the second sort of high-level observation is we still have a lot of uncertainty a lot of things we don't know about. Even 2030, which is just 9 years away, is far enough away that there are many things that may change. I want to highlight some of them, for example, from the power sector that you had mentioned. There are a lot of averages that may not apply. There are some myths of conventional wisdom. I may touch upon them, but I think those are larger discussions to be had. If there's one thing that COVID has taught us, it's that challenges don't just create difficulties, they sometimes expose them. And so similarly, even if we did not have carbon issues facing us, we would probably have immense issues of just and equity across the fossil sectors in India, not just coal, but especially in coal. The second high level sort of point that Sri Nagaraju had already touched upon, I won't dwell on it, is just that we can talk about a just transition within India, but it's important to keep a global perspective as well, and also draw lessons of what other countries have seen or what they've done or not done. We've already heard how little consumption there is of coal per capita in India. It's even lower when we normalize for the carbon content of the coal, the energy content, which is a proxy for carbon. And then India's per capita consumption is even lower because our coal is not high grade on average. And this is where you then step back and realize for other countries that have reduced their coal consumption, they have moved to something else. And that something else, contrary to popular belief, is not renewables necessarily. In the US, it was shale. Even in the UK, which does have a high share of renewables, it was natural gas much earlier when they had North Sea natural gas available. And for India, we do not have cheap natural gas available as much. We rely heavily on imports at the margin, and more so for the power sector, because it is not a priority sector for where it goes. So if we talk globally of winding down coal, I think a just transition at a global level needs to be winding down all fossil fuels, not just coal. One of the insights from this is we do have to look at the demand side of coal, not as much on the supply side. So we know that private sector coal mining is increasing in India. It's been opened up for commercial mining. This will not necessarily change the trajectory of how much coal gets consumed. It changes a little bit of who produces it, where, at what quality, what terms, what price, but it's really demand that determines it. And on the demand side, electricity is the key user, but electricity is where you have the highest competition from renewables, not yet from firm renewables. Here, I want to make an observation. Globally, you see a lot of these quotes that say, well, India has had these termed RTC bids, round the clock. Round the clock bids were about the firmness of the power. They were not necessarily about using storage. Most of that came from oversizing as opposed to storage. So it is not yet the case that firm RE, which means in the very long run with storage, is cheaper than coal, at least as coal is priced today, without necessarily all the externalities priced in. The good news is we have slack in the system. So it's really a couple of years hence that we have come to two things that change. For now, we have surplus in our system, thanks to a lot of growth of coal-based power capacity between FY11 and 16. 100 gigawatts roughly were added. We have a surplus of coal capacity, and that is why the PLFs have fallen, the plant load factors. The second thing that would change is, in the short run, all of the RE that we're going to be adding can be pretty much absorbed without needing any storage. There is slack in the system, plus VRE, or without a battery, variable RE can be absorbed. It's only after mid-2020s, plus or minus dates, we don't know exactly when, is when things will change and India will face much harder decisions on if RE is not cost competitive, then do we need to rethink coal? We still have enough under construction coal power plants that we may not need to necessarily pull the trigger to add any new coal power plants, perhaps ever. There is some modeling that says if you just finish construction on the existing that can peak your coal capacity, but not your coal consumption in the power sector, because the PLFs can still rise. It's already well known, and we'll hear, I'm sure, from some of the other panelists about winners and losers. I think the winners and losers need to look at not just the mining side of it, but also transportation, the railways linkages. Indian Railways is literally afloat thanks to coal because of the overcharging of all freight compared to passengers, but coal is disproportionately paying. But also issues of air pollution, where you have concentrated production of power in certain areas or segments. If you look at coal's plant load factor in India, everyone quotes that, oh, the PLF has fallen to 55%, maybe it's up 60. It's been creeping back up post-COVID, post some of the waves. And even this average PLF is actually very high PLFs in certain areas where there's disproportional utilization. And these are typically near the mines because of the transportation costs that are very high in India. So your air pollution aspect is, again, one where you have interstate winners and losers. One of the things that Sri Nagaraju mentioned, that in Germany, they've reclaimed some of these mines. The closure of mines in Germany was predominantly towards the hard coal, which was the underground mines. Handling the surface mines is much harder. The land areas are much higher. And what Germany really did was they paid off that sector. All the workers have enjoyed reasonable, or what are quoted as generous, pensions. In India, you have to step back and look at what type of coal miners there are. We have formal coal miners. Within formal, we have CIL formal coal miners who do have a pathway to not just retirement, some security, but also a possibility of a more graceful wind down. But now if you look at where the growth is occurring in coal mining, it is disproportionately through MDOs. It is disproportionately in certain localities. And as private sector comes in, out. The last point I want to make is, even though 2030 is not sorry, but we have uncertainty. Assets, we will probably need to first, we see a slowdown of growth. From the slowdown, we will have a
Mr. Tongia, we're having an internet issue at your end, I guess.
I agree with what was said at the start. There is no obituary of coal just now, yet. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Rahul. I think your last part of your presentation and the remarks were not audible to us because of the video and the audio both not being there. But then, yes, we have more sort of, all of us have heard your points. Yes, it is true that the future of coal is still uncertain. Obituary is not to be written yet. The only point is that whether the growth of coal-based generation or the coal sector is going to be as it has been in the past. It is going to be different from what it has been in the past, and one has to see that at what point of time we start looking at the issues, because it is, as you very rightly said, it is not only the coal mining, it is also the coal transportation, the power generation, and a number of other allied industries and sectors which are related to the coal. Coal is so ingrained, so well ingrained into our socio-economic fabric that one has to start thinking about it. And that is what I would like to leave at this point of time. Before I request our next speaker, Dr. Sandeep Pai, to be presenting his impressions about the work. Now, Dr. Sandeep Pai, for the benefit of the audience, I may mention that he is a senior research lead at the Center for Strategic and International Studies, Energy Security and Climate Change Program. He has recently completed his PhD at the University of British Columbia, where he wrote his dissertation focusing on fossil fuel phase out and just transitions. I think a topic which is very, very sort of should be dear to his research work. And it could be very interesting to know what are his impression, more so because he has been a journalist with Indian newspapers such as Hindustan, etc. And he has therein covered the topics ranging from the rural development to coal mining, etc. I think that is what is, he's a very, he will present a perspective which not only gives us an international impression where he's currently working, but also the Indian picture, what he has over the years of working in India. And he has also co-authored a book on global energy transition, wherein the human side of the renewable energy revolution also is has been looked into very deeply. I think over to you, Dr. Sandeep. I think we have heard you earlier, and for the benefit of audience, we would be very happy to have your views on this topic.
Thank you so much, sir, and thank you for having me today, and giving me an opportunity to speak about this topic, which is really close to my heart. So a few impressions. I looked at some of the findings that you have, and they hit the spot. Also because it's a very important topic to think about it, whether the jury is out there whether coal is going to decline now or in the future, in India's case. But the question is, how can we prepare ourselves for that decline? Can we understand what is the scale of the problem that we have to tackle? And then eventually, we have to create some systems to make sure that the losers are accommodated. So I will first start by, enlisting what happened globally where coal declined. So be it US, be it Europe, be it in other parts of the world, the decline actually in some ways started before thinking about just transition. And so just transition was rushed as a process, and it was created when the decline started. But India has the opportunity that, when the actual decline starts, although, some parts, some mines are already closing, but the actual full-scale decline starts, we should be prepared with the systems. We should be prepared with every element of just transition that is required. So to that end, I did a study where I collected a large data set to understand which districts in India are vulnerable to coal phase out, which districts in India have, and so this vulnerability assessment looks at a few things. It looks at revenues and CSR spending. So I collected that data. It looks at jobs, so not just direct jobs, not just Coal India and its contractor, or NTPC and its contractor jobs, but also indirect supply chain jobs, right, from coal transport to every other sort of indirect job. I did not look at informal jobs, which are a very large share. You go to parts of Jharkhand and you can see what the scale of informal jobs is. And so I looked at the jobs. One of the key aspects, which I think will be a really key element of just transition going forward, would be coal pensioners. Coal India already has, not Coal India, like the coal mining sector already has about 6 lakh pensioners, and it's growing. So when the coal decline will start, this pensioner bubble will be much, much higher, could reach about 1 million or so on. And then the final category sort of looks at infrastructure and some of the things that you had presented earlier, and so on. So based on data collection and analysis, I find that about 250 districts in India have some kind of coal dependency. Obviously the dependency varies. There are districts like Dhanbad and Korba which are deeply dependent on coal, but there are smaller districts with fewer jobs and fewer pensioners. Overall, all in all, there are 43 districts that have more than 15,000 direct and indirect jobs. Again, as a reminder, it does not include the induced impacts and others. So 15,000 jobs, and when you add their families, it's a significant number. So 43 districts are such that there are 24 districts with more than 10,000 pensioners. And there are some really surprising districts. Khammam, for example, it has 33,000 pensioners living there. there are 23 obviously states, 23 districts which have between 5 to 50 crore DMF collection every year, coal-based DMF collection. And then there are 23 districts which have seen more than 7 crores every year spending under corporate social responsibility. So when we combined all this to understand which are the most vulnerable districts, I find that there are 33 districts which have really large coal dependency. Although I must say that this dependency really varies from district to district. So you have some districts like Dhanbad which are really dependent on jobs and pensioners with 60,000 pensioners. But you have Angul which has more than 100 crore spending under CSR. So what I'm trying to highlight is dependency of coal also varies from district to districts and so on. So to that end, it's really important that we try to understand the dependency. So that's the first part. The second part is then how do we create systems? We have some case studies, from globally to understand some of the basic elements of just transition. Stakeholder engagement. You have to create local government revenue streams. You have to engage with unions, etc., etc. So how do we create those mechanisms and systems? Now, coal may decline in 2030s. That's fine. But if we start to think about these questions in 2030, it will be perhaps too late to address some of these issues. So that's why I congratulate TERI for this report. And it's important that more and more research happens in this regard. One observation that I want to make is that many people who are studying this topic in India are looking at Europe and America, which is the wrong place to look because their systems are very different. The place to actually look is South Africa, not because they have done a great job of just transition, but because they have conducted studies, research, and are setting up some of the mechanisms that we will perhaps talk about setting up in 2030s. And some of the informal sector, some of the ways in which the coal sector operates, in, especially in a province like Pumalanga, is quite relevant to a state like, let's say, Jharkhand. So I just want to end by saying that this is really remarkable, and I again congratulate you. It's important that more and more studies happen, more and more research comes out, and that should shape how we implement some of the elements of just transition. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sandeep. Thanks a lot for giving your impressions. I think there are certain important points which we as a body or the individuals note in India, what you have tried to mention. We should not be too late in trying to look at these issues. I think we at TERI also have this impression in mind that the transition or phase out of the coal may not be around the corner, but the transition in the coal is very much evident and it is likely to happen. It is only a question of speed, scale, and the time, which will perhaps it's uncertain. And from that perspective, I think we take note of the very important point which you mentioned about that we should prepare for every element of just transition. That is what is extremely important. And the microscopic view of the various districts in India from the vulnerability angle, what you have given is extremely important, and it will be helpful to many of us to be looking at these dimensions as we move forward. So thank you very much, Dr. Sandeep, and I think we will remain connected on this issue as we have been in the past. Thank you so much for your presence. With this now, I move over to our third panelist, Dr. Ashwini Swain, and we all know Dr. Ashwini Swain quite well. He is a fellow at Center for Policy Research. His research interests include the political economy of electricity, interface between energy service needs and climate mitigation. Of course, also water, energy, and food nexus, which is not the topic of discussion today, but he has worked extensively on public participation in service delivery. He has a keen interest in political economy of India and political analysis. So I would be very happy to, if Dr. Ashwini Swain would cover what does he look at this transition in coal sector. What are his impressions that how does the political economy in India look at this? Our impressions are there, but we would like to hear from him and for the benefit of the audience. And then, depending on what are his impressions, is there a way or is there a need to prepare the political economy for this impending change right now or later? And if yes, whenever we do, and what would be his suggestion to go about the molding the political economy or shaping their thinking about the transition which is likely to happen? Over to you, Dr. Ashwini, please.
Thank you, Mr. Saxena. And let me start with congratulating Souvik and team for the two papers that have come out. And as I see from the presentation, they bring out quite interesting insights, and I'm looking forward to read both of them. So given the time constraint, I'll stick to only 5 points. So the first point I wanted to re-emphasize, which has been mentioned by other speakers earlier, is that coal is not just a fuel for India. Rather, coal has been an engine of development in Indian context. And what Rahul said about coal subsidizing railway or public transport, or what Sandeep pointed about employment and livelihood at different levels. In addition to that, coal has been a important link between India's industrialization strategy also. So as we see, many of the thermal plants, particularly the central thermal plants, they have been located in far off places to meet that industrial need in underdeveloped states, and simultaneously public sector industries which are dependent on energy or related services, they have also come up in the sector. So that's a big linkage we have. And the other point I wanted to make, which has been indicated, is the public finance dependency. And we often, when we talk about public finance dependency, we talk about coal-rich states, the 7 states which are dependent on coal revenue. But central public finance also hugely depends on coal revenue. I mean, be it dividends or now this GST compensation tax, all those things. And in fact, one of the news articles recently pointed out that in last few years, fossil share in the total tax revenue has been increasing, though largely driven by petroleum products, but coal also contributes to that. And so in that context, even though, as Mr. Saxena pointed out, the economics has been working against coal. I mean, now the alternatives are cost competitive and the finance available for coal is drying out eventually. But there is a protective impulse in the policy space and from political side. And given that, I mean, we heard in the morning as well, and government has come out in various platforms, and to note the most recent draft of National Electricity Policy argues that going forward, India will need to add new coal capacity. So, and there's ambitions to raise coal production to double at least. So where we are at present in terms of electricity sector, we are at best doing energy addition. So we are adding more of renewable energy while continuing our dependency on coal, or probably, I mean, as the policy documents suggest, we have to increase it eventually. So this linkage of coal, and particularly with the macro economy, it's not just simple dependencies, but it's more of sort of an investment where coal, I mean, I'll give you one example. At one end, coal sort of contributes to subsidizing electricity in many of the cases. And at the same time, coal price goes up because we need public finance. We need to draw public finance from coal, and we need to support railway, all those things. So, given that, if the transition is not happening, should we discuss about a just transition or a post-coal future at this point of time? So, some may argue that we are probably discussing this too early, but I don't think it's too early. In fact, this is the right time we need to start this conversation, and I appreciate the work being done by TERI and others to understand the problem and find the way forward from this. So the key here becomes, I mean, as TERI study has pointed out, and other panelists in this panel have also pointed out in this in their studies, we need to understand these political economy lock-ins to coal economy, and how do we unwind for this? And it's not a simple way forward. It will be a complex process and long run. So we need to find paths to unwinding that. And the next question then comes, what is the institutional path for that, doing that? Do we need to think at the national level, or we need a bottom-up planning for this? So my proposal in this direction, my broad proposal is, we certainly need a national framework to deal with the situation as and when we reach there. But the strategy has to be very much state specific, because different states have different context, not just political economic context, but also in terms of resource availability and opportunities. Yeah, to re-emphasize, we need a national framework, but a state-specific strategy. And we need a large coalition, which should be multi-sector, multi-actor, and multi-level. So, I mean, there has been quite a bit of emphasis on people-centric. We need to include the stakeholders, but we also need to include stakeholders at different levels. So that's one aspect. So the other aspect I wanted to point out, when we talk about just transition, we start with the livelihood opportunities and loss of livelihood opportunities, and how do we change that. But what we are seeing in terms of particularly electricity sector, the alternatives to coal are coming up in the state where coal is not available, and probably that is one of the drivers. So given that context, the resources are shifting geographic locations. So how do we balance that distributive pressure? So now, if we think solar and other RE sources as alternative industries, alternatives to coal, they're coming up states where we don't have coal. So how do we redistribute the benefits from energy sources? So this is I mean, we have to see this as also as a technology shift happening, and within that technology shift, we have to address the distributive pressures as well as link it to macroeconomic transformation that's also India undergoing at the present. So to conclude, I would say it's not, we should not treat it as a challenge, rather an opportunity where we can not just solve the problem on coal dependent communities, states, but also unlock various paths to India's employment problem. We can also find way forward for rural economic distress. We can also look at find way forward for industrialization strategies. So my last point, my emphasis is we should rather treat this as an opportunity to unlock various paths to future growth. I'll stop here.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Swain. I think you have touched upon extremely important points. I think the protective impulse which is there, I think, yes, we all know that the protective impulse for the coal, and because it constitutes such an important share today, and it is so richly ingrained into our socio-economic fabric, what I said earlier. But we note that your impression that it's not too early to be talking about it. And I think we should treat it more as an opportunity rather than a challenge. And we should try to address all those issues which are likely to come up as and when this transition picks up certain momentum. And we are extremely happy to note about your suggestion about that we should have a national framework with a state-specific strategy and trying to see that where all we try to have the linkages and interlinkages and how do we try to build a framework which is sort of a appropriate framework for India in addressing this issue, which we call more as an opportunity rather than a challenge. And because we have started onto this discussion a bit good in time, I would say, I think it is perhaps right time for us to start thinking about it, start making a framework about it, and then taking it forward in the rightful manner so that all concerned see that what are the implications, and as and when it happens, are we very much in time to be preparing for that, or we are a bit too late. Thank you very much, Dr. Swain. That's so nice of you. Before I request the next speaker to be giving his impressions, I think I would like to request all the panelists to switch on, panelists and the distinguished speakers who are there in the morning session, the welcome opening session, to switch on their video cameras for a photo which can be taken for the record purposes, and which will be, we as a TERI team would be happy to capture it and keep it. So may I request all the panelists and the experts who were there in the morning to switch on their camera. Sorry, can you see that if that is done? Then we will move on to.
Thank you so much.
I will all of them done. Yeah. So thank you very much. Thanks everybody. And now I request our next speaker, Professor Pradeep Swarnakar. Swarnakar is an environmental sociologist. He's trained in climate change, energy policy, social networks analysis, and sustainability transitions. He's an associate professor of sociology at the Department of Humanities and Social Sciences at IIT Kanpur. He's a visiting scholar at ClimateJustice Research Center, University of Technology, Sydney, and he's affiliated to a number of other academic institutions and research organizations of repute. He's a steering committee member of the International Research Group, COMPON, which examines the climate policy networks in more than 20 countries, which he leads from the Indian side. He has been a Fulbright scholar, and he has done a lot of work in regard to the this domain which we are talking about. Now, recently he founded a climate and energy policy research lab, where just transition research is being carried out with the aim to deliver policy relevant results while keeping the vulnerable workforce at the center of their inquiry. So ladies and gentlemen, Professor Pradeep Swarnakar, his views will be extremely important in the context which we are discussing today. So over to you, Dr. Swarnakar, please.
Thank you, Dr. Saxena, and thank you, everyone. So this was a very interesting and important topic we are discussing in this morning. And so many things has been discussed, and major points had already been raised. So my intervention in this is like twofold. First is that as a sociologist, how we look at different types of justice. We have discussed those things. We have not named like distributive or procedural justice. And the role of social network and social capital in these things, particularly looking at the labor and labor union. So these are my 2 points I just like to mention. So to begin with, I just like to say that just transition is kind of already transition is a problematic thing, because we are looking for a large scale socio-technical transition. And why this is happening? This is happening internally or externally. So if we look at the theory of like epistemic governance or world society kind of a theory, we understand there are some international agencies or organizations which has some agenda setting, and because of that the government, different countries, they are having their own agenda based on these international organizations, and then it's going down to different state level or like very local level. And we have identified from our earlier climate policy research that there are four major actors, we can say. That is, first one is the government and political party, particularly the opposition. They are a major important player in any kind of policy making because they have to do their daily work in policy. And the second one is the business group, because they are involved, engaged, like whatever in the coal sector we have observed that important business groups, they are actually generating revenue, giving employment, doing a lot of stuff. The third one I just like to mention is the research organizations and think tanks university level who are doing kind of a research. And here at IIT Kanpur, we have Sustainable Energy Engineering Department and other energy department in different IITs. So they are doing technological research, a lot of innovations, and trying to find out solutions for alternative technologies. So they also have an important role to play. The final one is the civil society organizations who there are various types. It's not a homogeneous group. There are various types of civil society organizations who are engaged in research, who are engaged in advocacy, and this, that. So these four groups, how these four groups are interlinked with each other, and who is actually the key drivers, or who is actually the bridge. I mean, there are different layers. It's, again, I'm saying all these four groups are not homogeneous. There are different layers in these groups. But for any kind of dialogue or communication or transition, we need some sort of bridge who can actually speak with each other. Sometimes in some countries we have observed, like we have discussed many countries, example, starting from Germany, South Africa, Poland, Czech Republic, all this, and England and United States. But in many countries, we have observed that civil society organizations are actually is a pressure group to have some kind of a more inclusive policy design. Okay, so maybe it may be anti-coal protest, it may be anti-coal, anti-nuclear protest, and all these things. So the policy which is coming from this protest or activism, some of the people mentioned even this whatever is happening, this just transition, because why we need just in just transition, because transition is enough, and we have bureaucracy to and other actors I was talking about, they are enough maybe. But why just is important? Because just might be important not in this coal transition but in other sectors also. So Dr. Swain talks about the political economy, which is very important thing, and Dr. Pai talked about like very local level, micro level things. So we need to link from very macro international level to a micro level, a coal mine, open cast coal mine, and informal worker. So it's easy to say, but it's very difficult to actually even conceive like how to link these things. So solution is maybe I don't prefer the word solution, because we don't have solution of anything. It's a lot of uncertainties, but we have to design some sort of pathways. And here I think our present work in our lab is looking at the role of labor unions, because we have observed internationally that a lot of, and South Africa, this is very good example actually. South Africa is a very, very important country in coal transition and much comparable with India. And in South Africa, in Germany, we have observed the role of trade unions, because do this worker trust government, trust business, trust their company? Because trust is very important. As a sociologist, I believe that trust is very important in any kind of inclusive transition. We can go for that. We can give that, okay, we are giving a voluntary retirement and X amount. So for us, it's a justice. Whether for them it's a justice, we don't know. And whether it's a justice from a third party, the funding agency, ADB, international organizations, World Bank, and all these things, we have some idea. So who is interacting with whom? And there is a role of these research organizations, because there most of the time is kind of apolitical. They can interact with the government, they can interact little bit with the business, because business funded a lot of new technologies in IITs also. And they can interact with the civil society, who can interact actually more closely with the workforces. So if we look at this link and try to find out who can be the bridge, I think labor union is one important bridge. And it's an unexplored area in India, because labor unions are more actually concerned about the safety. I mean, traditional trade unions in mines or in power plants, I mean, coal-fired power plants. So all these are looking at the safety, raising wages, or other social security issues. Because we have observed internationally, let's take another example, because everyone is taking example, like in Poland and in Czech Republic, labor unions are not in favor of this coal transition, because livelihood is important. Because I think morning we have discussed like a very a bitter truth, like coal is not going anywhere. So, but this is kind of an opposite thing what we are achieving or aiming thing, because of the practicalities. So the next thing linking to this, I talk about the distributive justice. So distributive means what? Like the cost and benefit analysis, winners and losers, what we have discussed. So distributive in a sense of cross-country comparative distributive justice, like the per capita coal consumption or energy consumption, we have discussed already. And also, but we have not discussed within country, and that I think Dr. Pai trying to mention, like we have to take these micro level things very separately. It's not very much comparable. We need some sort of integrated thing. And what Dr. Ashwin said, that cross-state subsidy, which might be possible in Germany, but it's not possible in India, because the renewables are coming in some other places and the coal blocks are in some other places. Now this distributive justice, we know that like even the CBDR, which was the main thing in the climate negotiation at certain point of time, it's all about distributive justice, who was responsible and who will pay, polluters and pay principle, and all these things are coming up. So distributive justice is complicated. But right now, what we are discussing basically about the procedural justice. Okay, what should be the thing? Now we have started early, or maybe we have started late, but definitely it's not like 2030 and we are going to think like what is going to happen in 2050. So we don't know whether it's the right time or wrong time, but this is the time. I mean, there is no right and wrong time, but just to start these things. And this procedural justice, now to design this procedural justice is very important. And we have discussed all the topics about like inclusion of different agencies and all these things. My important point is that can we develop academically some of the indicators, so indicator based framework for procedural justice, because that might be, I mean, what is the role of an academician for that matter, so that they can communicate with the policymaker, they can communicate with the civil society and the workers, and bridge the gap between these two. So indicators and some pathway, because another thing important discussed is that the coal mine closure procedures. So if we just take one example of one coal mine closure and just study and trying to like design a framework for this kind of indicator based procedural justice system, that might actually scale up and maybe modified in other cases or something like that. So this is my point I'd like to make, and we are trying to do some sort of this kind of things, and talking to the labor unions in like very small scale labor unions to the national level labor unions and the international labor unions, because I think they have an important role to play. So there are many things to discuss, but it's all about political economy and the value judgment, which is good and bad. And it's not easy thing to say which is good and bad, because from us academicians and policymakers or international, like a green scientist, green policymakers, we always talk about, okay, we need renewable, we have to save our world, but that's a long-term thing we are talking about. So what is going to happen to the large amount of people who are in formal, informal, pension, without pension, even they don't have a job every day in the informal worker, or the driver who is just driving the truck from the one coal mine to another. So what is the job security of these things? So we know these are the problems, but we have to think, and this is the right time to think. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Pradeep. I think you have given us certain very, very important points, and we all are well aware of that. There are various groups and there are various layers within the groups, and you talked about the 4 important groups and their roles which they can play, and particularly the point in regard to the bridge for dialogue, which is extremely important, and the 2 sort of entities you identified which can act as a good bridge is labor unions and the research organizations, because the research organizations are always seen to be independent and objective rather than having any sort of a interest involved anywhere. And the labor unions from the point of view that yes, that they represent the real sort of a views and impressions of the masses which are going to be affected by this. That is certainly extremely important. The distributive justice concept, yes, certainly one has to keep that in mind, that we take note of the point. I think we also feel that this is the right time perhaps to start bringing this into the mainstream discussions rather than keeping it at something which is going to be perhaps striking it us later and try to deal with that at that point of time. I think the indicator-based framework, I think extremely important to look at, and while we move forward on this subject, we'll be very happy to take note of your work which you are doing, and we will learn from that. And as we shape our own impressions as we move forward on this topic, we'll be very happy to be reading more and learning more and more from your work. Thank you so much, Dr. Pradeep. So nice. Now, may I now request to Mr. Jaykant Singh, Head of Strategy, Program Development, National Skill Development. He has to go to some other event. So he has some other engagement, and we are very happy to have you, Dr. Jaykant Singh, at this webinar. Your role at NSTC involves the new business opportunities in the skill space. You are responsible for managing the state engagement and developing the research page for skills at the National Skill Development Corporation. We are very happy to have you here. And as you would have seen that the dimensions which are there in regard to the whole sort of a transition and the ingress of the new type of technologies which are likely to be there. We all know that the coal mining and the associated sectors, the skill levels are not that high. And when the transition has to take place, I think there is a huge amount of quantum jump, I would rather say, is required in skilling this. So I think you have a perspective in regard to the skills which are required for the coal sector, which will be required for the renewable sector. And the audience would be very happy, and all of us also would be very happy to listen to you and see that how do you see this role and the skilling or reskilling or whatever will be required in the context of this transition. Over to you, Dr. Jaykant.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for giving the opportunity to share views on such an important topic, which is inevitable to happen. We have heard our speakers very clearly talking about pros and cons. I think the topic today, just transition, is rightly placed because I would focus on only the just transition part. As we all know, and you mentioned yourself, sir, that transition is inevitable. We have to move this way. We are committed to it. Now, if that is inevitable, let's talk about the opportunities and the solutions. Now, I've got a few points to mention. From our previous speakers, we heard that 1 megawatt of solar power gives you an opportunity to create a job and 2-3 down the line jobs. Similarly, if you have a solar top, you have got 1 job create or 4 jobs created with a rooftop. So lot many jobs are getting created if you are switching on to renewable energy. So I would also like to submit that I come from a place called Lalmatia in Jharkhand, which is third largest coal mine in Asia. So the power through fossils come, we have heard that there are so many advantages and it serves to livelihood of so many people, but it comes at a big cost. The poor people has to give up their land, and it's only one generation who benefits out of it. The rest of their generation, there is no guarantee of how they will, move forward or progress in life. So there is a big cost that the family or the landowner has to pay. And we have also heard from our previous speakers that once the coal mine is closed, it's not done properly in the country, and that leaves, there is no change in their lifestyle, because those lands become a waste. As long as coal mining is done for a generation or two, it's a very happy situation. It gives you economic opportunities and you have a good life for a generation or two, but rest of the life, rest of the generation, you can't assure. But if you have got a piece of land, I think rest of your generation are assured of something they can do and earn their living. So that was one of the points which I wanted to share. Now I would focus primarily on, if it is inevitable, what are the opportunities? And now, as I come from a skills background, I think I see a lot of opportunities which is coming up if we go away from the traditional coal-based power generation, because coal-based are highly job intensive. Whereas if you look at renewable energy, it will create many jobs comparatively. And it also gives you an opportunity to become an entrepreneur. It assures you of a better life if you become your own entrepreneur. And we have all seen during COVID times, the more the challenge, the more the entrepreneurial ability which has come out, and the country has proved this. Our history talks about that all Aryans or Indians by nature, by birth, are entrepreneurial in nature. And that's how we have moved on to sell and reached out to countries like US and all over the world to sell spices, if you go back to history. So we have, the more the challenge, the more the better innovation the countrymen will come out with. The coal mines also gives a comfort zone to the people who have lost their land, because they are assured of some job, some amount of money. So yes, the big challenge what is going to come up with is taking them out from their mindset of being into a comfort zone. And the moment the challenge comes, I think every Indians have got the ability to show their innovative skills and their entrepreneurial skills. And it has been proved again, time and again. And COVID is the latest time where you can see people have come out stronger and with new ways of doing business, newer business. I was just now attending one of the calls where WhatsApp was talking about how they have helped new entrepreneurs to scale up their business in this COVID times. So my suggestion would be that if we have got a plan, if we have got a visibility that how coal mines will be shut down, how power plants are going to be tapered, and the new generation for solar and manufacturing units might come up, or any other renewable energy. If we have got a plan in place, what we should focus on is, let's do a baseline survey. So there are two types of areas to work. One is where a new plant is going to come up, where there has been no past history of coal mine. So new manufacturing unit for renewable energy units might come up. So for there, you need to have a skill set which is totally new, which is totally futuristic. So that's one set of skill set which we need to facilitate in the country, where again we need to do the training for newer technology, for the newer skills. Second set would be, the existing coal mine areas or the industrial coal-based power producing units, which will gradually taper off. In those areas, we should do first a baseline survey. The baseline survey should talk about, and one of our speakers just now mentioned that there are 250 districts which will be affected because of coal mines, and there are 43 districts which provides job to more than 15,000 people. So if the statistics is so clear, I think the job for us becomes very easy, that we should focus, we should get on job to those areas. If there are only 15,000 people to be facilitated job in 43 districts, I think it's not a big challenge in the age of technology what we have. So first we do a baseline survey. Let's understand their strength, weakness, their aspirations, the local geopolitical situation, the local socio-economic position, the traditional livelihoods, and then we can come out that what are the traits in which these districts should be promoted. It can be a cluster-based approach, it can be a traditional-based approach. So a proper planning needs to be done, followed by a skilling program. It could be skilling, upskilling, or facilitating entrepreneurial skills. Second is the new technology, which I said, new technology could be for the renewable energy or the newer areas which are going to come up. And that's how we will be able to address the socio-economic transition, which all our honorable speakers have spoken about, that is going to impact significantly. I think it requires a proper planning. It requires a baseline survey to be done now. It requires the newer skill sets which has to be trained, and NSDC is well prepared to take care and facilitate anywhere and everywhere in the country, either the traditional skills training or the new skills training. And not only that, we are also well placed to facilitate and handhold for entrepreneurial promotion. And we have done it. We are working with CIL in many coal-based areas. There are challenges. As I said, the first challenge is comfort zone. All the CIL companies on the ground are facing a problem. A doctor, a well-established degree holder of MBBS, wants to become a gardener in a coal-based plant because it assures you a daily minimum revenue or a monthly income. So they don't want to work. That's the current challenge. And wherever there is a displacement, all these companies are facing tremendous problem at a local level. So we know those problems, how to handle. We only need a plan, a government's plan, that how the tapering has to be done and how the renewable energy units are planned to come up. I will give you one example. Electric-based vehicle. I think you will be surprised to know that this will come up first in remote areas, in rural areas of India, then in urban areas. And do you know why? Because again, India has got the Jugaad technology. If you talk of the engines of any vehicle, it requires so much of investment to be conceptualized, to be developed. But if you talk of electric-based motor car, I mean, people in India are so well known for their Jugaad base. They can set up because power becomes easy. With RE coming into place, they can configure their 1-seater, 2-seater, 3-seater, 4-seater very well. So it will, as the rural areas are more Jugaad based and they are more apt into Jugaads, they will come up very soon. You have seen how the 3-seaters have come up, how the tractors have been changed as a multi-purpose vehicle. So because generation of electricity will become cheaper through renewable energy, I think the economy will significantly change. The scale up at rural areas would become very easy. Yes, the problem of battery charging is something which is currently a big bottleneck. I think with lithium-based battery coming up soon, that problem would also be taken care. And it also gives a lot of opportunity for new job roles. Like earlier you had tire puncher, now you will have battery charger units at very small, every 5 kilometers, 2 kilometers. So new ways, service and repair for all your solar system and equipment. So there are so many new trades which are going to come up, and with power becoming so easily available, and with time, I am sure today during daytime, renewable energy powers will cost you low, but during night, again the coal-based power are cheapest. So as soon as things change on the cost of this power, I think new downstream projects will penetrate into rural areas. And I don't see at all a challenge that people will face in time because of livelihood, because of unemployment. I think the pressure of transition will force Indians, and we are confident, and they have proven their skill time and again, that if there is a challenge, they come out with the innovative skills. And please note that the current way of living in a coal field area is so poor, so bad, but with this new technology and new ways of livelihood, I think their quality of life will improve significantly. So from all perspective, I see there is going to be a transitional challenge, very sure, but it is going to be for a much better and happy future for generations to come. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Jaikant. So nice of you to have given your impressions in regard to the ground level issues which are there. The transition comes at a big cost to the family or the landowner. Yes, that's the most important point, but one has to keep in mind, and that is what is the real meaning of just transition. The transition has to be just for the last man in the queue, not only for various stakeholders which are there at the central level, the state level. All these players get affected in a number of ways, but the last man in the queue, or the last man on the ground, or the persons working in those areas, I think it is extremely important to look at them. And you made a very, very important point that what we think that is being offered to them looks good from the donor's perspective, but when it comes to the person who is going to be affected, I think that's a huge, huge issue for him, for all of them. And I think we very well know this, but the just transition has to take this into consideration in the rightful manner while moving forward. We also take note of the very important point which you made about in regard to the baseline survey which needs to be done, and how do we go about in the about the skill development and requirement in the areas which are sort of a greenfield areas, or whether the area which could be sent to the brownfield area where something is already expected, is there on the ground, and which is expected to be more depleting over as we move forward. I think, and we are extremely happy also to note that NSDC is well prepared and to provide any type of support in skilling, upskilling, or facilitating entrepreneurial skills, which are extremely important as India is moving to a newer sort of economy with more decentralization and the digitalization. Thank you so much, Dr. Jaikant. We'll be very happy to remain in touch with you and learn from your learning, so that how can we take this forward in the rightful manner as a research institute. Thank you so much for giving us your time.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Now, may I request Ms. Mitla Sobba to give her impressions for the benefit of audience. I would like to introduce Mrs. Smithla Sobba. She is head of policy and communications at Azure Power, one of the leading renewable energy company in the country. She has experience in marketing, strategy, public relations, and communications. She tracks all policy matters in the renewable energy space, liaises with policy and regulatory stakeholders. She also leads corporate communications for the company and focuses on building relationships with the company's stakeholders. She is a key member in taking company to its initial public offering. She has a bachelor's degree from Bangalore University. She has done her master's in business administration from Lucknow. I think we are very happy to have you, Mrs. Smithla. We would be looking forward to your impressions in general. How do you see that the renewable energy can play a positive and catalytic role in this transition? And the other aspect is whether you have been in touch with some of the stakeholders which are going to be sort of the losers in this transition. If you have certain impressions, that will also be very, very valuable for all of us to know. Over to you, Dr. Smithla.
Ma'am, you have to unmute yourself, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for having me here and giving me an opportunity to speak from a renewable energy perspective. I think we've talked, renewable with time, replacing, I would not say replacing, but yes, taking some share in the energy mix. I think the country at a 40% target, it's still a very far stretched target, but I think nevertheless, India is in the direction of having a very speedy take on that share, right? Especially with all the policies that are that have developed and are developing. I think we will see that share taking by renewable energy. So talking on the transition part, I think a lot of from a renewable energy point, I think we talked a lot on the transition needed when the coal plants are winding up. But I think the other side to it is we should also be looking at what are we doing to really step up the renewable energy sector in terms of skills, because now that we're talking about social economic upliftment, right? As we know that with the Atmanirbhar push in India, there is a lot of shift that has happened in the in energy policies. We see a lot of tariff and non-tariff barriers that have come in the sector to really get manufacturing to get manufacturing push in India. And I think with time, I think it's just a matter of time. We have the basic custom duties in place for next year. We have the ALMM in place. We already had the SGD, which is ending mid this year, and then we have the PLI scheme, right? I mean, there's 4,500 crores which will be put in the sector. This will give a lot of opportunities for the sector. When I say opportunities, it's not just about capacity addition in the sector. We are talking about livelihood in that the sector will bring. We had a few panelists talk about how solar project will get more livelihood to the people in general. And it's not just about concentrated states. We have to understand that renewable in India, we are a very fortunate that ways that India, the irradiation in India is very high, and that's why we the solar, or for that matter wind, is we have the spread of this project all across India. The limitations of this project might be because of the geographically, might be because of the financial status of discounts, but geographically every state has, most of the states have the potential of developing in these states. So with these potential in all the states, that means there'll be more livelihood in the states, and especially projects, these kind of renewable projects are in very rural areas, right? So there is inclusive growth there will be inclusive growth as and when the projects are set up in such areas. So coming back to the PLI scheme, right? I think there'll be a lot of work opportunities in here in the sector in the coming years. I think it is very important for us to really build that kind of manpower to absorb this opportunity, maybe in a very high skilled high skilled sector, I would say development upskilling, or it can be a semi-skilled profiles. Manufacturing will have a lot of, might have concentrated high skilled use, but we have a lot of rural rural opportunities in this. When a solar project is being constructed, say 100 megawatt is being constructed in the rural areas, most of them should be locally absorbed while during construction. This can only be done if the locals are semi-skilled, right? And not just during the construction, and even after the post-construction, there are lots of skills that can be absorbed. Maybe in the capacity of guards, maybe it can be in the capacity of operation and maintenance technicians, grass cutters. So there is a lot of opportunity, but these opportunities will be given to the rural areas, or the the people who actually might not have access right now and can only absorb when they have the right skill sets in place. So I think that is one aspect of social economic upliftment, and the other is I think we talked about whether, when and how the wind up will take place, when and how renewable will really take take that space up, right? So I think so far, I think renewable has gotten so far. One, obviously, because of the environmental factors, the global pressures, and also what the right thing to do. But also, I think one important factor that we've not talked about is the economical aspect of it. Had renewable or solar, wind for that matter, not come in parity, the energy price parity, then energy renewable would not be successful. So, and now, since we've already reached that energy parity, and there is much more competition than the fossil market right now, so so I think that competition will still stay. Now the other question that comes up is because solar, when it started from 17 rupee per unit, and now we already know that it is early 2 rupee per unit. So we've already reached, it's very low. Now the other question is, will it sustain? I think the other question is, one is about sustenance, and the other is, will it ever be able to replace the formative nature of coal, right? I think that the time will still time will answer to that, but I think storage will be once we have storage in the market, right, and with sustainable pricing of storage, then only then I think that will really scale up. Now it's a matter of time how this storage will really dominate the market in the commercial sense, right? Because we are already seeing that the government is coming out with such tenders. They're experimenting with RTC tenders. They are experimenting with hybrid. They are experimenting with hybrid storage, right? But I think it'll still take some time. But as and when storage will, it's very commercial viable, I think that's around the time when this impending transition will really show its true value of all the preparation that we are making. I think that is the time when I think we should be really we should be ready at that point of time. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mrs. Mithla. So nice of you for giving your impressions in regard to the opportunities which are there on account of the solar, India being fortunate to be blessed with the solar potential being there, and the inclusive growth it can provide wherever we build the solar systems. Secondly, the skill development aspect and the Atmanirbhar Bharat, I think extremely important for a developing country like India, and most in the context what we are discussing today. I think we take note of your points. Yes, economics is driving the transition, and we all certainly look forward to the days when the storage becomes comes to a level where I think the dispatchable renewable is possible with some form of storage. Thank you very much, and so many thanks for giving us your time and joining us at this webinar. Now, I would like to request the next speaker, Mr. Chandra Bhushan. Mr. Chandra Bhushan, as all of us know, is one of India's foremost environment and climate change experts. He is presently the CEO of International Forum for Environment, Sustainability and Technology, abbreviated as IFOREST. Over the past 2.5 decades, he has been engaged in a wide range of environmental issues through research, writing, and advocacy, and has been at the forefront of several public policy campaigns. By education, he is an engineer and environmental planner, but he integrates the scientific and technical expertise with socioeconomic realities which are so important in a developing country like India. His work encompasses not only the global but also the local issues. So he provides the right kind of balance and the perspective. How does India look to the world outside India, and how does India look to the masses within India? Extremely important panelist today, Mr. Chandra Bhushan, very warm welcome to you, and we would like to have your impressions on this important topic what we are having today. May I also request if you are able to touch upon some of the issues like the major challenges which the local economies usually face during the transition, and which are the sectors which have the maximum potential to influence the transition process or the speed of transition. So over to you, Mr. Chandra Bhushan. We are all ears to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bhattacharya. Thank you for a very kind introduction. I'm really thankful to TERI for inviting me to this important discussion, and congratulations for the release of the report as well. I have heard the panelists as well as the remarks made in the inaugural session. I think more or less things have been covered. There is obviously a very clear division in view in terms of how this transition should happen. And I would like to focus on bringing these two views together, because I do not think there are two views. There are only two concerns, two different kinds of concerns. And it is possible to bridge the gap between these two concerns. The first point I would like to make is that transition is not new for humanity. We have moved from wood to coal to oil to gas and to renewables. So actually from human power to fire and down the line to fossil fuels. And in each transition, we have actually become more efficient. Think about if the world today was only dependent on wood for energy. Can a 7 billion strong world meet its energy demand from wood? The answer is no. Even if you forest the entire geographical area of the planet, you cannot provide the kind of energy that 7 billion people needs. So, but we have moved to coal. Coal had its externalities, carbon emission and the climate change, but coal certainly was far more efficient than wood. And oil is far more efficient and cleaner than coal, and gas is better than oil. And renewables are better than most, simply because it has less externalities than other fuels that we have used in the future. So the point is, transition is fact of life. People who have embraced transition have developed and grown more rapidly. The electricity transition in the US was fundamental in industrial revolution in the US. The coal transition in Britain was fundamental in industrial revolution in 18th and 19th century. So I do not think there should be any concern about whether transition should happen or not. I think we should embrace transition. It is an interest of India to embrace transition. And I was delighted to hear, our panelist, Mr. Singh from National Skill Development Council. He's from there. And he knows the impact coal has had on the local economy. We sitting in Delhi and enjoying electricity from coal do not understand and even realize the kind of externalities coal has on local community and local economy. You go and ask a tribal in Jharkhand whether he likes coal mines or not. And I can guarantee you right now, 70%, at least 70% will say, we do not like coal mining. 30% will say yes, because they have jobs. So there is a resource curse aspect of mining in general, coal in particular, that we need to understand. If you take the map of coal mine of India, coal resources of India, overlay it with poverty, you will find more or less a perfect match. So coal and poverty goes together. For the local community, it might be good for us in Delhi. We are getting electricity, cheap electricity. But just transition, therefore, concept is not only about us, whether we get cheap electricity or industries get cheap electricity. It is also about what community gets. And therefore, the point that I would like to make is just transition is already a reality in districts of old coal mining regions of India. Jamtara no more has any coal mine. At one point of time, it operated 5 coal mines. Jamtara became famous by this Netflix series that you all would have seen. But Jamtara was a coal mining district. It doesn't have any coal mine today. There was no transition that happened in Jamtara. 50% of coal mine in Dhanbad is closed already. Coal India Limited would not say that it is a closed mine. They will just say it is a temporarily closed mine. But we are closing coal mines. So at the sub-national level, we are already closing the coal economy without any transition, both physical, socio-economic and environmental transition. Mines are not closed, which is actually, there is a fund which coal companies have to put in the escrow account for rehabilitation of coal mines. That is lagging behind. Socio-economic transition doesn't figure out. The only good thing is, because coal production is expanding, no one is being chucked out. So formal job is moving from one district to another district. You close coal mine in Ramgarh and Hazaribagh, and you send your worker to Chatra because you are opening coal mine in Chatra. So, but for the local community, closing of coal mine and its transition, its problem is already for everyone to see. The third point I would like to make is, while worker is an important part of this entire debate, it is important to understand that in India, we are an informal economy. In coal sector as well, 80 to 90% people who make their living out of coal do it informally. And therefore, we have to understand the role of trade union, and we have to understand how do we bring the perspective of informal economy. It is not the Western concept of formal economy and jobs and just transition. If we only follow that, we will do a big mistake, because 90% of the people who are dependent on it have nothing to do with formal job, has nothing to do with the formal economy. And therefore, the just transition in some of the coal district, not all the coal district, in some of, Sandeep talked about 40 district. I would like to bring it down to about 20, 22 district, where the transition will be about socio-economic transition. It will be a broad-based socio-economic transition and not only the worker transition, where you will basically have to change the industrial structure of the district. Because in these districts, everything is centered around coal. The good thing is there are resources to make this transition. Coal companies in general have close to 0.2 million hectares of land. It's not a small amount of land. And there is a potential for transformation that can happen in some of these districts on those land, if we are willing to repurpose those land and not keep them only as water bodies, which seems to be, the rehabilitation plan of many of these coal areas. So if we are very focused on repurposing land and infrastructure, we will be able to transform the economy of some of these areas, because they're also rich in forest and agriculture land and water resources. So there are potential, but it has to be maximized. The planning will have to happen from now. I don't think we need to think that because coal will start reducing in 2030, we should plan from 2030. We will be doing a big mistake. The planning of transition, both at district and state level, should start from now, because it will take 20-30 years for this transition to happen. This transition is not happening tomorrow. It will take 2 to 3 decades for things to finally see for us to finally see the results. The last point I would like to make is that resources will be very important, and how do we get resources for transition? And we will have to think about both a convergence framework for public resources, but also private investments, because private investment is going to be the most important thing for us to get, restructure the industries in these areas. So private investment is going to be very, very important. Coal is one, but also coal-related industries we will have to look at, both steel and cement industry, coal-based thermal power plant. There are a lot more districts who are likely to get impacted because of closing of coal-based thermal power plant. Steel and cement will come in 2030s when we have viable technologies. Steel, moving to hydrogen is not yet viable. I would give another 10 years for steel to get that technology. But steel and cement transition, especially steel transition, is not about phasing down the operation. It is about technology change. So their job numbers might increase, because India's steel consumption is projected to increase. So we can have green steel, we can increase job and production in steel sector. Cement will have to find alternatives away from, the calcium-based, limestone-based cement that we are producing, because it has inherent carbon emission. But in other sectors, there are options to move away from coal without phasing down the operation. Steel, as I said, is one of the examples. So with this, thank you very much. This is an interesting topic. This is the beginning of discussion in India, and I think there's a lot more that needs to happen. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Chandrabhushan. I think you have touched upon very, very important points. I think all of us take note of them. Many of them are gel with our own thinking as well. I think your line which you mentioned, that transition is not new to the fact of life. Yes, we are all noted. Transition has happened in so many fields and areas which you mentioned so explicitly. And the message that you have is that we should embrace this transition and we should look towards it as an opportunity rather than being a challenge. That is what is extremely important. And we need to plan to start for this from now. That also gels with our thinking, but we in the Research Institute think about. You gave certain important impressions about the land, how do we repurpose it, and how do we go about it, and also the requirement of finance, which will not only be sufficient from the public sources, but also the private investment is required. Yes, we have also looked at the work related to the steel sector. I think we have a report from TERI It brings about the future of steel, which is there, and how the decarbonization of the steel sector could happen, and what are the possibilities, etc. That is available on our website. Of course, power sector related work is also there on our website, and we are still looking into. We have the issue up to 2030. We are looking at more deeper dive at up to in the midterm at a more granular level, and a longer term view also in regard to beyond 2030. Also, we are looking at these studies. Extremely important. I think we take note of the point which came out through the discussions that yes, there was a clear division sort of in the views in regard to the views expressed by various people. I think that has always happened, and this is such a topic where I think the debate is still open, and the pathway is still sort of a pathway is known, but I think the future is uncertain and the time is not very well known that when it is going to happen. And otherwise, something which seems to be to many people is a bit far, then they think that I think this is not the right time to discuss about it. We will discuss it later, but then we can all have our own impressions, and let's see how we move forward on this important topic. Thank you so much for sparing time and giving your valuable impressions.
Mr. Bhattacharya, I just want to invite all of you. We are launching India Just Transition Center, an initiative of iForest on 29th. You all are most welcome to join the launch ceremony on 29th at 5:30 in the evening. Please do join.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We will certainly. Thanks a lot. So the last what we have on the agenda today is a video from Professor Kuntala Lahiri Dutt, who is professor at the Australian National University, and because of the time difference and other engagement she had, I think she is not able to make it to the webinar, but she has sent a video, which is a very, very exhaustive video. But because of we have already run short of time, I think our colleagues have very hurriedly tried to encapsulate it into a short-term video, which gives the glimpses of the important points made by her in the longer video. So may I request the host to play that video from Professor Kuntala Lahiri. Before you start playing the video, I would like to introduce Professor Lahiri Dutt. She is
Hi, I'm Kuntala Lahiri Dutt, professor at the Crawford School of Public Policy.
we are extremely thankful to Professor Kuntala Lahiri for giving a detailed presentation, which in a way substituted for her being here. But yes, we would have certainly loved if she was present virtually and we could have listened to more of her thoughts. However, that's all we could do with the available material and her own availability at this point of time. So now with this, we have come to a close of discussion in this, the panel and experts we were having with us. I would like to thank all the panelists on my behalf and on behalf of TERI team who has worked on this theme and today's webinar. And I would now hand it over to my colleagues in the TERI to take it forward.
Thank you, Mr. Saxena. Thank you everyone on the panel for a very engaging discussion. Unfortunately, due to the paucity of time, we cannot go through a Q&A session, but the questions have been noted and we will sincerely take them forward in our research ahead. I would like to invite Mani Juneja for the vote of thanks. She's a research associate here at TERI. So over to you, Mani.
Thank you all for being a part of the event today. On behalf of TERI, we would like to thank CIFF first for their support in conducting this whole study. We would like to thank Mr. Rasmi for his welcome remarks today. Our sincere thanks to Mr. Ram from Niti Aayog, Mr. Bhargava from NTPC, and Mr. Nagaraju from Ministry of Coal for their addresses and setting the context today. We would also like to propose a vote of thanks to all the panelists for sharing their perspective and insights on the topic. We extend our sincere thanks to all the delegates for their participation and their valuable comments. And last but not the least, special thanks to the whole TERI team for their contribution to the study. And thanks to our program cell and the IT cell for helping to organize the event. And with this, we would like to move to the end of today's webinar, and thank you so much.